Welcome to the second episode of Tabletalk, R&D for Greater RP. Today's episode is on resource management, or bean counting, or milieu of everyday life, whatever you want to call it. Whether it's food, arrows, torches, whatever. My guest today is Rob, a fellow GM who was unique enough to offer up a perspective different from something like 500 other people when I shared a positive comment through several Facebook groups. I cannot wait to speak with him. How are you today, Rob?
Doing all right.
Excellent. It's hot, you mentioned.
Yeah, it's well, my tolerance isn't very high, so
I see.
I'm sweating balls right now.
So, we were going to talk about bean counting and resource management at the table.
Yeah.
How do you feel about resource management?
Resource management it's very dependent on the players. If they're not any good at it or they find it too stressful, it can bog down a lot of things. So, I try to streamline it as best I can for players that I have. And when I do actually run it, I make sure that I keep a list of everything they have and where it supposedly is at. And everything. If they forget about it, I let them no longer exist.
I see. Now, when you say resource management, could you be more specific? Food, ammo, what?
It's in my games that I run, especially when we get into real heavy stuff, I have an expanded crafting part. So it's like materials, food, camping supplies. I run a heavy survival level thing, so everything can rip, everything can break.
Nice.
So it gets a little bit harder on my end, but I have a few players who really like that aspect, and I like that in a few games that I've played, video games and RPG and pen and paper games. So it gets exciting. You lose stuff in the middle of combat, and you can no longer use it. So it gets a little tedious, but basically I print out sheets for every container they have.
Like each backpack, each chest, like that?
Yeah, each backpack, each chest. Backpacks are different than sacks in my homebrew because I allow them to have so many. They each come with a number of on the outside of the pack as well.
A number of what? I'm sorry, you broke up there for a second.
A number of slots.
Okay.
That you can strap something to the outside of the pack.
Oh, nice. So like a smaller bag attached to the outside of your backpack.
Yeah, like a bedroll or something attached to the outside, or they might have their quiver attached to the side of their pack.
I see. And you keep track of every arrow, every hardtack, snack, all of it.
Yeah, a lot of it's preemptive. I let them do their searches. What they find, I check off, and that's what I tell them they get. What they don't find, I don't tell them about at all.
Huh.
And so on. And, and then, like, I already have the weights. I already, before the game even starts, I already have the list of everything they're going to possibly find in that dungeon or whatever. And I already have the weights and everything, and all I do is it's a Excel spreadsheet, so I just kind of click and drag it into place of wherever they decide to put it. And I'll let them know when they're reaching limits for their bag, when the bag's too full or when the bag's too heavy.
In a world like that, where the milieu of bean counting and resource management is really important and crucial to survival and immersion, do you have things like bags of many things?
Oh, yes, bags of many things, bags of devouring, a couple, it's bag of holding. Bags of many things.
Sorry, that's what I meant. Would you believe I actually had a bag of many things once?
That sounds like a cool concept. I could probably write something up for that.
My apologies. I meant bag of holding. Yeah.
And those are, like, their bags, they get to keep copies of all their bags. But, like, with mine, like, sometimes they want to build stuff, like, that's big, like boats.
Oh.
And, look, boats, they go off on little pirate missions or whatever, or they want to build an airship. I allow them to go through the hassle of that. But another thing that I do is I have a living economy. So it's like an apple might be, what is it? It's like 5 copper in 5 or 10 different places, but in a place that doesn't have apples, it's going to be more.
Right, it's more expensive because it's more interesting. It's closer to a what's the word I'm looking for? Not an exquisite item. You know what I mean? It has a greater value.
It's a living commodity.
Luxury. There we go. That's really cool. And you balance all that easily, and your players don't get bogged down in it. They love it.
I try to keep it as easy as possible. So a lot of it's all about pre-planning.
Right.
So I try to make it as easy as possible. Only certain characters really go after trying to learn how the living economy works and what they need to buy and where they need to take it and stuff like that.
Well, this is definitely dependent on the player, right? Do you have any player... Well, the enjoyment level is definitely dependent on the player. Do you ever have any players that give you a hard time for that and wish you would just have gold or whatever?
Not really. The players that they can do that if they want. If they just want to do a job and make some gold and buy things, then I have pretty set amounts of what they can make over a period of time.
Oh, that's not what I meant. I meant, do you have players that are like, well, copper and silver or gold, that's a lot of crap. Can there just be gold? Do you ever have a player who wants you to simplify everything like that?
Sometimes when somebody brings in a new player to any group that I run, I see that. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times it has a lot to do with the 5th ed and the whole TV show bullshit that 5th ed surrounds that brought all sorts of popularity. That it's really annoying. There's lots of people who want to play D&D now that
I have mixed feelings about Matt Mercer and what he's done for the industry. Don't get me wrong.
He would be a great DM. Even he has said that he's had a negative influence.
Like, don't get me wrong, before anybody flares with the comments and was like, he just badmouthed Matt. No, I didn't. I said I have mixed feelings about what he's done for the industry. On the one hand, he's popularized D&D, and that's awesome. And on the other hand, people show up and want the Critical Role Matt Mercer experience, like all of them. And not everybody's capable of producing or helping achieve that.
And the thing about it is like his crew is, they are working with the full gold, copper, and silver thing. You just don't see a lot of it because they're in the later stages where they're only working with gold. Yeah.
I don't know. I love Matt for anime more than I love him as a dungeon master. He's a great dungeon master, don't get me wrong. But
he has some really good points to make and stuff like that, but the popularity that he's brought is it's toxic.
It is. I don't know if I'd use the word toxic. I'm certainly not saying you shouldn't. I'm not saying I would. But I definitely think it's people who play D&D are definitely from different worlds now than they were before. It's much less of a niche thing, and with popularity comes, well, everyone, because that's what popularity means. And I don't know. But before we get way off topic on that, bean counting. Because this is a whole nother show we should have. Bean counting. I guess where I was going with that was, do you think there's any intrinsic value brought to the table by the milieu of bean counting, or is it just something you personally like doing and your players also like it?
A lot of players that I play with and stuff like that. And understand, I do DM, but I do play more than I DM.
Okay.
But a lot of the crew that I run, a lot of them are old school, been around since at least 3rd edition.
And they want that stuff. It's part of their...
Yeah. I mean, they want a lot of it. In 5th ed, the damage system is better. I like some of the handles on certain things. But in terms of bean counting, if you're a new DM, you don't have to play the mess. You can just hand them vouchers to get whatever items and stuff like that, and it makes it relatively easy.
Play the mess. What you mean? Like you don't have to deal with?
You don't have to deal with a lot of like you don't have to deal with gold and stuff like that. Like the whole idea of bean counting, you don't even have to bring it in, because the way D&D has always been written, it's predominant combat based, and anything outside of that is
secondary in the D&D siege engine. Totally.
So, yeah, I mean, and that would be my advice for any new DM. But a lot of my guys, they like it more accurate. They're not looking for like the Disney, PG-13, everybody's going to be friends and sing Hallelujah or whatever.
And get along and have a great time.
Yeah, no, I mean, they have fights between one another. I let them go at it.
Oh, yeah.
Bean counting is difficult. It takes me at least, I don't know, I put probably just on the bean counting alone of getting all their items ready for the next session. Everything, probably do about 2 hours.
Like before and after every game, once a session, what?
No, it's 2 hours before every session.
Oh boy. Just the bean counting.
That's broke up throughout the week. It's broke up throughout the week.
Oh yeah, but that's 2 hours before every new game session.
Yeah.
That is just bean counting.
Yeah, well, I have an expanded crafting section.
Right. You said that's really cool. So three emeralds that are ruined equal 1 emerald that's good, like that.
Well, no, I follow a proper gem system. So an emerald's never really ruined; it's just smaller.
Right. I was just trying to. That was an example. I was trying to get a better.
I use the carrot system. I'll actually tell them how many carrots they found.
Oh, that's cool. Nice. I usually go with how big it is, and I don't mean inches. It's the size of.
That's exactly what a carrot is.
Right. I usually don't use the word carrot. I describe it instead. But carrots is a great idea, assuming your players know what carrots means.
Well, if they don't, it's a great way to learn.
That's true.
D&D is a great learning platform for math.
Oh, absolutely.
And learning different systems that have been developed over a long time.
Oh, yeah.
So, there's about another 5 hours of prep for the rest of the game for me for, out-of-game actual logistics.
How long are your sessions? I'm trying to figure out how much prep time you spend per session, like ratio. Because if 2 hours for bean counting doesn't sound so bad if you sit down for 8 hours.
It all depends on how free everybody is. It's anywhere from 4 to 5, usually. Occasionally we'll have the 10-hour stretch.
Wow. I cannot remember the last time I did a 10-hour stretch. That sounds both incredibly exhausting and wonderful.
It can be. We take a lot of turns, so we'll run a couple campaigns, so when someone gets tired, someone else takes over with their campaign and stuff like that.
Oh, that's cool. Nice.
Differently, so...
no one suffers burnout, right.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's a smart idea. I don't think I've ever had the opportunity to do that, where multiple players who were comfortable GMing were present at the same table I was GMing at.
It's a great way, I was taught by a DM who got tired and decided to throw me at it with a one-shot.
That's fun.
So...
yeah, I had a different experience. I wanted to know how to do it, and I was like, you know what? The DM I just had was great, the one before that was terrible, and the one before that was great, and I don't want there to be another terrible, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So you put in at least half as much, behind-the-scenes prep work as you do actual gameplay time. Yeah,
and that's not counting, all the prep in designing the campaign.
Oh, yeah. Campaign prep time can take a really long time, depending on how meticulous you are.
Yeah, and when you run a higher level crafting system, it gets... Because, you run higher level craft, now I have to think about... You're talking about bean counting outside of the game. I have to look at, papers I have to print off, and, I have to think about what they're going to come up with.
Right, you have to... maybe they're going to build a ship, okay, but how big is it? How big does it need to be? How big do they want it to be? Right.
Yeah. So... But, they have different resource management. They have...
How do you handle the... Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
If you had, here's how I run the game I'm running right now. This isn't how I run them all, but this is how I run this one. The game I'm running right now is dark enough and hollow enough. There aren't really any heroes. Everyone's Game of Thrones, good and bad, right? So I try not to bog everything down with a whole bunch of bean counting and milieu and stuff. Except when it counts. So like if the players go into, they go down the holes and they come out of the hole by the end of the day, I subtract, a certain degree of food from their supply and some gold for the week. Right. But if there's to cover their living expenses, because their adventure.
I usually don't take gold if they already bought their supplies to live out in the wilderness and camp out. I don't take any gold from them.
Well, that's true. I suppose I shouldn't have said those in the same sentence. If there's a cave-in or something, right? If they, for some reason they can't leave and they can't replenish their torch supply, their food supply, their clean water supply, whatever, then all of a sudden, though, we start counting those by the biscuit or by the half gallon or whatever. And they're
I don't work that into a lot of my stories and stuff like that. Because I don't know. I've never really found it interesting.
Specifically the food component or the choke their supply component.
The whole being trapped in the cave component.
I see. That isn't the only way I've made there.
I choke their supplies through other means by putting them through tundras and deserts. But when they're smart enough to actually have a ranger with them, it doesn't really affect them that much.
I suppose what I meant there was the theme of it. Is there ever a time where their resources are important to the plot in a more direct sense than y'all gotta eat?
Yes. There'll be certain places they have to go, especially if I bring in anything from Spelljammer.
Ooh, fun! I love Spelljammers.
Yeah, Spelljammer's fun. And usually in my world, there's not too many people who know about it. So it's they have to find the people to learn about it, and then it gets into a lot of different information they have to work with, and that's counting beans on information.
Oh yeah, now you're talking intel, not just here's how many torches I have. Nice.
Yeah. So and then when they get into the astral sea, everything goes kaput.
So we're about at the end of the 15 minutes, but if you would be willing to sum up how you view the worth and value of bean counting, that would be great.
Bean counting can be really fun and the players should really decide. And this isn't a direct question to them. If they're no good at it, or you see that they're stressed out because of it, you should probably a little out of your story. And this is the majority of what players we're talking about. Everything. It's not incredibly important in D&D. With a predominantly combat-based system, you can still write a good story and still have a lot of fun. And that's pretty much it. I think that's a summary.
Thank you so much. This was great. I would love to speak with you again at a later time. Absolutely. I could get into a lot of stuff, so I think we digressed one too many times. No big thing. I have a friend of mine who says that being a nerd, being passionate about anything, argument comes with the territory. Resource management and a living economy. A brilliant idea, or kind of silly? Really, really useful, or ultimately fruitless? Your decision, not mine. Later days.